How's it going, guys? It's been about 6 months since my last upload, and for that, I apologize for those who have followed and supported me all this time. For those of you who are new to the channel, hey, my name's Martin. I'm just a regular guy who likes playing video games and other hobbies and occasionally makes videos about them. I aim to make things either educational or entertaining, so if you like what you see on my channel, then I hope you subscribe and stay for the ride. To explain my hiatus, there were several things keeping me busy the last several months, mostly my wife and I purchasing our first ever house and moving in. During this time, I also have a full-time job as a project engineer, so in my spare time I've been following up on old hobbies like fighting games and picking up new hobbies such as collecting trading cards. This ultimately led to me playing less and less Swordmaster Story as well as mobile games in general. People say the hardest part about any project is starting, so I'm hoping by uploading another video again that this helps me get back into the routine, as I do still enjoy making videos. Without further ado, let's get into the tier list. Alright, so quick disclaimer, this tier list is catered towards mostly raid and what the current raid meta is, as that is what most late game players worry about and where you get most of your materials, gold, scrolls for upgrading your gear and characters. Most of these characters will be plenty fine for new players to get through campaign and adventure mode and all the other game modes like Dark Lord's Tower, even Guild Territory, but some of the newer characters like those in S tier, and basically any new character nowadays is going to be an S tier kind of by nature and design. So with that said, the current raid metas are going to be currently are all mage or all archer teams, which is why you see characters like Rena up top here with Rhea, who are the two newest archers. Those have been doing really well with raid. And then the newest character you may not notice during the release of this video is Yura. She's basically going to be a new Leaf Warrior that's going to make all warrior teams very strong. And so that will just be another option that is viable for late game raid. So not necessarily a new meta that's going to replace all the existing viable teams, but I think having her in the game is going to allow players more options. And so depending on the raid boss, you're just going to have to rotate through different teams for your best result. So to kind of go into that, first we have the newest or will be soon to be released character Yura. You can go look at her skills right here. Basically, I won't go through all this, but she has a potential to do tons of damage, as well as also creating lots of sustainability and survivability for your team. So that's going to help tremendously in raid, as you'll need both the ability to sustain and to deal out as much damage as possible, given that I think the current time limit is 120 seconds now. So some raid bosses are healers, so they don't do any damage to your team, so it might make sense to go all DPS characters on those days. Other days, you might need some more shields and sustainability, more healing, in case the raid boss does a lot of damage as you rack up score. So keep that in mind. So I'll let you guys read through that. Basically, with any new character, they're going to be S tier. That's kind of what's been done in the past couple characters. Other than maybe Miyu, she was an S tier tank. But in a lot of cases, you may be able to survive without needing that much tankiness. So next character we have is the newest character, Celine. So I'll give you a quick snippet of her skills. So she can do some decent damage as the newest unit. She provides lots of sustainability and shields, I believe. So right now, putting her in lots of high damage teams like with Hera, possibly even Rena and Rhea, provides you both that damage and the sustainability side of things. So I'll let you guys read through her skills. There's quite a lot here. She does have lots of passive buffs, so that's just another reason why that characters are this high up, is they have a lot of buffs to the team. To go on a quick tangent, you may notice that I have 3 tiers here, S, A, and B tier. The reason why I have so many in A is because these are all great characters and can kind of bounce between A plus, A, and A minus. So I didn't really want to have to make 3 different tiers just for that, because at that point it can be pretty subjective and depending on your use case as to who is A plus or A minus, etc. So I'll kind of go briefly over pros and cons of each kind of grouping of characters, but to go back to the S tier, we only have 2 characters or 3 characters left to review. So the first one was Rhea. She is a very strong archer if you haven't had her. She's great in all archer teams, which favors the meta right now. So she's very good with archers like Eros, Kana, Mary, and Gaia. And her element changes and copies to exactly what Kayn is. So she's pretty versatile and her damage increases a lot over time. So that's why she's currently in S tier. Next up is Hera. Hera is a decent damage dealer. She's great at providing plenty of shields for the team. So you may see her in all mage teams, or you might see her sprinkled in lots of kind of hybrid teams with Rina and Rhea, just so they can help deal the damage while Hera also helps provide shields to the team and keeps them alive. So she's very flexible and her kit is very strong with any team, so that's why she's in S tier. And then finally Rina, she's the latest archer that's been added to the game. She's just a massive DPS archer, and so she naturally pairs well and synergizes well with all archer teams like Rhea, Kana, and Eros. And Eros helps provide additional healing and sustainability. So when you put them all together, that amplifies all their synergized skills and passives. So that's why the archer team is fairly dominant in today's meta. So going into A tier, the reason why there's so many characters in A tier is because these guys have all been useful for raid at one point or another in the past couple months. So obviously you have a lot of your supports and archers in the A tier. So you have Eros, she's great at healing and support. Kana and Mary are both great DPS. And then Gaia also provides some damage, but mostly she's there to help amplify the team's archer abilities. And then Aphrodite is a great team-wide healer and support. Miyu, she's one of the game's strongest tanks. Alice is your newest water warrior. She just does a crap ton of damage overall. Same with Irie. She's gotten buffed recently, so you may start to see her become more prevalent as the new character Yura comes and becomes all warrior teams, for instance. Next, you have Luna and Haru. They're both kind of mage and warrior respectively, who both deals great damage and provides either shields or blocks to the team. So they're great for just sustainability and damage. So you'll often see them paired with a couple of those in the top tier here. Psyche is another archer who provides shields and some damage. She's often less used compared to these in the front, just because these characters like Aphrodite, Eros, they probably already provide enough healing and shields for the team. You have Mary and Kana having superior DPS over Psyche, so that's why you may not see Psyche as much. And same reasons for Kayron and Artemis. They don't have as nearly team-wide benefits for the team, and their DPS may just be a little bit weaker than Kana and Mary. Next up is Odin. She's a light mage who at one point in the old patch she did a bunch of burst damage. Since then that's been patched, so you might see her kind of lower, but she's still a solid pick overall for all mage or burst teams. Next up you have Lugrant. She's a leaf healer or mage, but she essentially heals the team, deals a little bit of damage. She's mostly there for support, so you may see her in teams that involve Odin and Hera, for example, or even Selene. Next up, we have a couple warriors, or I'd say all these warriors used to be lower, but I'm predicting to be moving up with the release of Yura. So you have Vivian, who provides shields to the team, doesn't really do any damage, but a very solid tank overall. Belphegor, she's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest warrior in terms of just DPS. So DPS, but maybe no sustainability. So that's why you may not see her in as many teams, because she's just all attack and no sustainability or survivability for the team. You have Poseidon. He is, I believe he was a limited time character, or at least they release his banner every now and then. I just haven't seen him used by top players quite as much. He does decent damage and has some team-wide passes for the team, but nothing that really speaks volumes compared to those above him. Same with Ares, and he in his own right does a lot of damage, has some blocks and passes for the team, but otherwise not nearly as useful as some of those running an all-archer team or all-mage team. We have Zeus. So Zeus has been buffed in the last few patches. He does great damage and is great for, all those all-light raid teams. But other than that, he's not very useful in terms of utility. Same with Rosie. So Rosie, basically very niche. There's only 1 or 2 raids where you might use Rosie, and that's if you're using the burst strat, but I think since then that's been patched, so you may see her go down, but otherwise she's very useful. If you need to burst someone down, use her skill. She makes the next team member's skill enhanced to do a lot more damage. Next up we have Ymir and Dark Lord, who are both dark type mages. Ymir does okay damage as well as providing shields to the team. Again, the shields aren't as useful or strong as those in the higher tier, so that's already a big no-no. And her damage is really nothing to be impressed at, so that's why she's kind of been lower on the tier list. And then with Dark Lord, her damage is just kind of mediocre. Unless you're fighting a dark type boss, then she does a bit more bonus damage. And other than that, she doesn't really provide much utility to the team other than a small attack bonus. Persephone, she's a healer who basically has the ability to have your characters revive. So she may be very useful for a lot of new players, a lot of late game players. If they need her for a specific raid, it might be 1 or 2, where you just need that extra healing. So that's where she may come in. Next up, we have a couple old school mages. So you have Lucifer. She had 1-2 raids where she did a lot of burst damage, but since then that's been patched, so you may see her go lower. So similar use cases with Joan of Arc and Athena. So maybe with all mage burst teams kind of falling out of the meta, you may not see them as much, as they were there to provide buffs and also kind of support for the team. Hades, she basically provides huge shields for those all dark, all fire teams, but because that's pretty seldom, you may not reap her benefits enough, as well as her damage is kind of lackluster compared to a lot of the pre-existing mages above her. So that's why she's really have moved down in my list, and I've rarely used her since. Thetis, when you get her to high transcendence, she is great. She provides lots of blocks to the team, but with every new character that's getting that same skill set, providing team-wide shield and blocks, she's become less prevalent, but can still be a useful character for any new player or any player in general. So she's very versatile and very strong, so I would still keep her in A tier. Similar vein, you have Ariel, who's a water type warrior. She does decent damage and provides shield to the team. So not bad enough to be in B tier, but not quite a must-have that she has to be in S tier. Same with Mia. Mia provides blocks and healing to the team. Other than that, her damage isn't spectacular, so she's kind of in the middle, so middle of the road A tier. And we've already talked about Kairon. This Hestia character, she's basically a burst character, like if you've ever had Megumin during the collaboration Denmachi or Konosuba event. And she basically just is a burst character, so maybe not the best character for a raid when you're just trying to get DPS and sustainability. And then in a similar vein, you have Efreet, who's a fire type warrior. She does decent damage, has some interesting burning effects from her passive, but other than that, she doesn't provide any useful team-wide benefits. And then lastly, we have those in the B tier. These are characters that I just haven't really used much in raid, if any, and outside of that, I've also rarely used them at all. So you have Khaleesi. She's basically like all these 3 mages right here. She does a little bit of magic damage, mostly used for burning effects for specific dungeons that are weak to burn. Other than that, she's not really amazing in any way. You have Dark, which I used to love. She was great at mowing down lots of mobs. Like when we used to have slasher mode or infinity slasher mode, she was great for that. But she has no place in raid or any kind of similar game mode like Dark Lord's Tower or guild territory where you have to take down a very strong boss, single target. For Theseus, so he himself doesn't do much damage unless you're fighting someone that is weak to fire. Then his attack does a lot of more bonus. Other than that, he provides team-wide benefits to warrior teams, but so will Yura when she comes out, and she provides more sustainability and damage too. So I would, definitely see very little use out of Theseus. Next up, we have Aina. Aina, kind of like Khaleesi and Athena, they all have kind of okay magic damage and some penetration and buff to the team, but otherwise nothing in terms of massive damage or massive shields. So she's pretty much useless. Same with Demeter. So she was a replacement for the Danmachi character Ryu. So she does some decent magic damage, but otherwise doesn't really provide much to the team. And then we have Lilith, who is another dark mage. She mainly is there to buff Kane's damage, but the recent addition of the stones that improve Kane's damage and the fact that Kane's just not really a main DPS anyways, she's really only used for specific guild territories where the weak characters or bosses are weak to Kane only. And then lastly, we have Yui, who's a strong healer, but basically she's been rendered useless given that every new character nowadays heals the whole team and does damage and a myriad of other things. So really Yui doesn't have much place other than maybe buffing Kane in those guild territories where you have to use Kane as your main DPS. And that wraps up my prediction for the upcoming Swordmaster Story meta / tier list. I apologize if it seemed kind of all over the place. This was just kind of off the top of the head. So if you guys have any specific questions, concerns about any of the placements, then just let me know. But I think with the upcoming changes in patches and new character, there's going to be plenty of viable teams. You're going to have your archer teams, your warrior teams, a mage team even, like some hybrids here and there. So I think there's going to be a perfect team for each specific raid boss, and we're just going to have to rotate each day. So I don't think there'll be one meta that will just completely replace one. I think we'll just have to, like I said, rotate through them. So I would encourage you to try and upgrade and invest in most of these characters in A tier as you kind of see the need for them, and especially upgrade those in S tier as they're the ones who will get you the most bang for your buck. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.